Good morning, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to the 2021 Juneteenth celebration. Again, we thank you all for coming out and being a part of this space with us today. As you can hear in the background, my daughter is saying good morning to everyone as well. My name is Daryl Merriweather, and I'm joined today by our Juneteenth committee. So at this time, if you all can unmute your mics and introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Tatiana Randolph.
Good morning. I'm Sydney Campbell.
Good morning, I'm Jason Brown.
And we also have Dr. Kyrie Williams with us today as well.
And last but not least, Jamal Nelson.
So throughout this event, various members of the committee will be facilitating portions of the conversation and the celebration as well. So again, we're here to celebrate Juneteenth, right? Also known as Freedom Day. Just to kind of make sure that we understand that this day is an American holiday that commemorates the June 19, 1865 announcement of the abolishment of slavery in Texas. This day celebrates the emancipation of enslaved African Americans throughout the former Confederate America. Texas was the most remote of the slave states, and the Emancipation Proclamation of January 1, 1863 was not enforced there until after the Confederacy collapsed. Now we know that Juneteenth is the oldest nationally celebrated commemoration of the ending of slavery in the United States, dating back to 1865. So now that we have a little history, now we'll go ahead and jump into our agenda for today, and I will pass along to Jamal Nelson with some housekeeping items.
Yeah, so for today, like I said earlier in the chat box, we'll be using it a lot. So there'll be a lot of conversation happening there. So we hope that that is a space for you to see what we're doing and for you to be able to know what's going on and how we're going to interact with you all. So really just keep that in mind as we're moving forward, as that everything's probably going to be in the chat box and a couple of things that'll be on screen. So first thing I want to put out there is that in your top right-hand corner, if you're a person who doesn't or has not gotten the chance to be a part of the live stream events that happen at ACC, there is a little icon for your chat box. You want to click that, and then it's going to ask you to put your name in. And when you put your name in, that shows who you are, where you're here in this particular room. And we want to know who you are. If you have something to say, we want to address it. So please go ahead and go and do that. Make sure your chat is open at that time frame, just so you can be interactive with us and we can interact with you. The next thing that we're going to use to communicate with folks that we're obviously putting out there for people to use is our Padlet wall. So this entire time, this entire month of June, we've had our Padlet wall up. And what that means is that we're going to try to make sure that you see everything that we do during Juneteenth and afterwards. There's a lot of different resources that are placed there. There's good news is going to be there. So eventually we're going to put an actual link to this actual Padlet wall in the chat. During this event, you can post on there as well. It takes photos, it takes images, it takes links to different websites and articles, even videos. So if you had a YouTube video that you really like, you can post that. So please go forth and do so. It is definitely something that we're really pushing for everyone who's involved with this event today to see and be a part of. So as you can see, that's what's on the screen. It should be our Padlet wall. And you get a chance to really just use that opportunity to be a part of us and continue the love for Juneteenth itself. The next thing that we have, if we can move forward, is our rules of engagement. So what that just means is that as we're going to be in the chat a lot and as we're going to have a lot of conversations here, we want to make sure that people are very, very, very much aware of the fact that we have so many different things going on, that we want to make sure that we're respectful of the people that are in the space. So the first thing that we have as a rule of engagement is actually respecting others, respecting the space that we're in, and knowing what this space is being used for. This is a celebration. It is a space for us to kind of learn at the same time, show love. You know, I really want to push that in the chat today, is that show love. Shout out to people that have been here for you. Shout out to the folks that have been some of the heroes on, basically carrying some of the weight of the things that we've been doing. So use this as a space to respect other people and respect what we're trying to do here. Two, if you don't like something that someone has said, which I know challenging ideas come up a lot, don't challenge the person, challenge the idea. And that's just the basis of not understanding how to not attack the person, but to really focus more on what is being said. How do you approach this particular idea in a manner that makes sense? And how do you break that down so that you can have really fruitful conversation later? So really approach the idea, not the person. And then the last thing is any behavior or anything that we kind of see like a little weird or also inappropriate. Our grounds for just pushing people out of chat and dismissal from the chat, because we need to make sure there's a safe space and a space of love, a space of community, and an opportunity for us to really understand what Juneteenth really means. So during this time, we know that people will share so many different stories, so many different feelings, all the things that have come up for them, all the things that have come up for their family, and given the time frame that we're in, emotions that might have been kind of bottled up during the time frame of the past 2 years. So really, we want to make sure that we're seeing this space as a spot of love and as a place of celebration. So please do that in the chat. Please make sure that you can uphold these particular rules that we're putting out there. At the same time, have fun. This is an opportunity to really get to see folks in the community that you may not have gotten a chance to talk to in a while. Or if you just haven't been able to be a part of any events, this is an opportunity to do that. So have fun with it. Enjoy the time that you're having with us and the space that you're going to be able to be a part of. So next thing that we're going to play actually is a video from the legend himself, Professor Hayes. And if you don't know about Professor Hayes, I don't know what I need to tell you because the brother's been at ACC for a very long period of time. He's actually almost one of the best way I could put it is he's a historical artifact of ACC. And that he's a living legend. You ask him any question about what has occurred from 1973 until now, he'll give you an answer. So I think he's a good opportunity for you all, if you haven't had a chance to see Professor Hayes or even talk to Professor Hayes, to get a chance to really know about his mentality and how he views certain things in our community. So he's providing a foreword for Juneteenth. And also, if you haven't known about that, Professor Hayes is also one of the providers for Juneteenth for the longest period of time with the African American Cultural Center. So before we got to this virtual platform, the in-person was done by him and his team of folks. So we want to show this video, Professor Hayes, and hopefully it's something that you enjoy. So the first question is, how did the planning and the origins of Juneteenth come about for you and the city of Austin?
Well, I knew about Juneteenth when I was a young person. I was raised in East Texas. East Texas is a population of the largest number of African American, like black people. And I use the word Negro because that, to me, Negro is next to genius. But where I was raised, 65% of my county was Negro people. And so I was born into an environment where people respected each other and they celebrated those things that were important, like church, birthdays, religious holidays. But I'm telling you, the most important day in my life as a young boy was 19th of June. 19th of June was as important as Christmas because I lived in a community where there were some very prosperous black men, black women, especially black men, because we had a train CP shop that they made trains there. And black people got jobs in that train shop equal to anybody else. The owner, name was Jay Gould. This was a white man from New York, from the East. He built a train depot, train station there, a manufacturing plant there. And he said that everybody who worked there would get paid because of their merit, not because of their color. And so a lot of black people came there, and a lot of black people became successful engineers, workers in this business. And so a lot of blacks came, and so you had a lot of black folks there who were very involved and very intelligent. But when it came to the events that we had where we recognized each other, one of them was the 19th of June. It's like the 4th of July. It was a date where we celebrated, even though the Emancipation Proclamation, which had been signed, and people say it abolished slavery. It didn't abolish slavery in Texas, parts of Louisiana, and parts of Arkansas. And it wasn't until Gordon Granger, who was a federal general after the Civil War, landed at Galveston and had to declare to these white people who had slaves in Texas that they could no longer keep slaves. And when the word hit Galveston, it permeated or moved throughout the state. And so black people realizing that was a unique difference. That was 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was supposed to be effective. And so from that point on, every June, it registered among us as a day of reckoning, a very important day in our lives. And we did great things during that day. We had went to church in the morning to honor the fact that God had answered our prayers in that regard. But during the rest of the day, you'd have picnics, baseball games, visit with your friends, dances at night, and everything. And every year it got better. 19th of June is a very powerful day.
So what does it mean to you, since it's a very powerful day, and you said it was...
When you have a date of your own, you'd be amazed at the kind of confidence that comes because you're in charge of everything. It's like your birthday. Your birthday is yours. Nobody tells you what you're going to do on your birthday, or they shouldn't, but they don't track you because it's your day. Well, 19th of June is black people's day. It's not a day for somebody else. Now, if anybody wants to share with us, they can. It was a day of doing and once you do what you know to do, the way you want to do it, that confidence is built. When you go to a place where the people who run that business, created that business, own that business, that's why Prairie View is such a powerful institution in the state among black people. Because that's a school that black folks run. I know that we get money from the legislature and you get tax money and all that. But the point is, when you walk on that campus at Prairie View, the president of the institution is black. It's like being in your house. You do what you want to do in your house.
Yeah.
But when you got somebody trying to tell you how you are, and that's what is happening in Austin. I don't think they're going to have anything in Austin this year. That parade is gone. I don't think they're going to have. They may have one in Bastrop. They may have one in Pflugerville. But they have slowly decided that they're not going to have one in Austin, and it's not going to be at Rosewood Park. And anybody who's been here 10 years can remember when you couldn't get through Rosewood Park on the 18th because people would be down there staking out in a place where they're going to barbecue, have fun tomorrow. That used to be one of the biggest events in this area. I would imagine this coming 19th of June, you'd be lucky if you find 10 people down there in Rosewood Park.
What are your thoughts on how this will really impact the future of Black America, either here in Austin and at large?
To me, that's an interesting question because I don't think a lot of this is dependent. It's because of some other group of people. See, if you don't know your history, you take what I give you. And I'm not trying to be smart or be offensive. When you start trying to figure out what you're going to wear for St. Patrick's Day more than you're going to do for 19th of June, I can't blame anybody who's into that because that's your socialization. What black people have done and what we are about is not being perpetuated. If I don't celebrate my birthday, I don't expect you to celebrate it. And so if I don't emphasize who I am, what I am about, and what I do, why would I expect you to do that? And then you have a few people who who want to say something negative about the younger black kid, because the young black kid may do some of the things that I said, but that's because they don't know anything about themselves. There are three institutions that have perpetuated blacks since they've been out of slavery. One of them is the family, other one is church, and the school. Black schools in the South are gone. And now, if I'm not going to a black school, a school where people know the history of my people, they ain't going to talk about that. They're not going to talk about that. And that's because they don't know. So I'm not mad at them because they don't know. I think they ought to know, but if there's no way for me to learn it, I'm not going to know what it is. The family is gone. Drugs got the family. That's a whole different conversation. Those who control economics and those who control information, they'll tell you what's important. And that's a whole issue that we need to try to deal with. And if you can't control those, then you are victim to whatever I tell you. And church, you can ask yourself about that. Where do you go to church? I mean, what does the church mean to? I know what it meant to me when I was coming up, but I've been around long enough to know that the church doesn't mean as much to younger black kids today. And then maybe the church has a lot of adversaries because it used to be a time when the church was the biggest thing going in the black community. On Sunday, you go to church all day, and you go back at night. But that's because that was exciting. What is that void? If that came, and I think that's a very great need for all of us to have some kind of son of being, to believe in something more powerful than myself. But where do you learn it? If you don't learn it in church, or you don't learn it in your family.
I did want to go back to the top because you've made, with a large amount of people here, you've made this space at Eastview a space for celebration for Juneteenth. And seeing all the photos, seeing all the folks be outside, like, how did that really start for you here? Like, how did you kick that off at Eastview?
When I was younger, one of the things I used to do when company would come to my parents' house, or whenever I went anywhere, as I grew older, when people would tell stories about what it used to be or what it used to happen, for some way or another, I gravitated to that and I enjoyed it. After I got working on my master's degree, one of the things that got me into African American history was that I found there were so many things that I saw when I was coming up that were real. But when I left my environment at home, people denied that we did those things. But there were some things that black people did, like what Booker T. Washington did, what George Washington Carver did, W.B. Du Bois did. You know, what people who are nationally known, they are in all that kind of books. And so when you look at the pictures, you know that they were real. And one thing I wanted to do when I said, if I'm going to tell a story, I'm going to show you what I'm telling you. I think you have three dimensions. I think you need to see it, hear it, or read it. And if you have to, you can be involved in it. So I try to fill in as many of those dimensions as I think. And it helps to bring people to reality. And so at ACC, I try to take pictures of everything every endeavor, every episode that we deal with. As many students as I can. So when we go to places, even some of them come back and say, did I do that? Yeah.
So thank you, Professor Hayes. I know he's probably not in the space today, but I want to be the person to say thank him for giving us that information and to being very real and honest about his experiences and sharing that with us. And something I always will take away from that interview was he said he takes a photo of everything, and he truly does take a photo of everything. If you ever get a chance to sit with him and ask him, he's got a photo of it. So he really is about archiving the lives of people, especially Black people, and what we do. So thank you for that. And I'll always appreciate being able to hear the legend himself. So next thing that we have is actually two videos from performers. So something that we have been pushing out there and showing people that we've been able to get performers to actually be here for us. It's mostly video recording, so we'll be able to post those really quick. But what I want to do is to also be able to talk about who they are and what they believe themselves to be and what drives them as artists. So our two performers that are coming up first is Jackie Benson, she was born in Austin, Texas, where music is everywhere, and this is her bio. It's important to her that she spread joy and positivity through her performances, and she finds inspiration and beauty and resilience of our people, meaning Black people. And then the other performer that we have is Amanda Johnston, who was born in East St. Louis. She has values, which are family, community, equity, and artivism. She believes that artists must document the times that we live in, and that it is that the personal is political. She is inspired by daily life and large and small events across humanity. So we'll play these two performers back to back, and we'll hopefully, after that, we'll move into our next section. So if we can go ahead and get Amanda's video pulled up.
Hello, my name is Amanda Johnston. I'm a poet, an educator, and a community arts organizer. I'm also a former ACC student. I started my higher education journey at Austin Community College, and I didn't quite know where it was going to take me. I'm excited for the journey that I was put on, all of the things that I was able to do with my education, all the people and places I was able to meet and go to because of my education, and end up with a master's in creative writing, and that's helping me be the poet that I am today. I'm going to share a couple poems in celebration of Juneteenth, which I always look at Juneteenth as an opportunity to reflect on where we come from, but definitely to look at where we are as a community today. So I'm going to read 2 poems from my book, Another Way to Say Enter. And the first poem is titled, No Good Deed Goes Unpunished. I see the white man driving next to me and consider every scenario of this moment as we approach a red light and what's at risk if I lower my window, expose my daughter and myself to the unknown repercussions of kindness. I calculate the risk involved to tell him his gas cap is open. His face, a concoction of morning traffic and time, ignores my initial honk and gesture toward his tank. My daughter asks, is it safe? I assure her I'll smile, be soft, do all the right things that in no way guarantee will survive this human interaction should he see danger, a threat in my concerned Black woman face. I honk again. I refuse to live in a world where we're too afraid to do what's right. The man turns toward our car, aware now of our existence, and the immediate future rests in his lap and what's beyond my understanding. He nods and drives off, gas cap dangling. My daughter corrects me, no, Mama, the gas, is it safe? And I'm lost in meaning. What is safe in this burning for survival? The next poem I'm going to read is called When My Daughter Wasn't Assaulted. She shook with fear, or was it guilt, at the officer's unraised hand and smile. How she leaned away slowly when he called a tow truck instead of backup. How her tears fled when he showed mercy over rage for the couple on the side of the highway, flat tire wasted against asphalt. She couldn't help but look at her white boyfriend pacing along this strip of road and wonder, what if this was a different part of Texas? What if this hero was a different shade of power? Would she be so lucky, or was it luck? If the absence of a known pain is just a heavy hand in repose. Thank you.
I don't praise your God. I praise the earth and the sky and the moon. I don't follow time. I follow ways of the earth and the Bible. What I do to you is a witchcraft, and it's up to you to resist that. So time after time, we have the power. But no chance to shine, only to be devoured. Waiting patiently for things to change. Well, now change has come, prepare for the way. What I do to you is witchcraft, and it's up to you, resist that. What I do to you is witchcraft, and it's up to you. There's a new day coming. Oh my, how we prayed. There's a new wave coming. Don't get swept away. There's a new day coming. Oh my, how we prayed. There's a new wave coming. Don't get swept away. There's a new day coming. Oh my, how we pray. There's a new wave coming. Don't get swept away. There's a new day coming. Oh my, how we pray. There's a new wave coming. Don't get swept away. And what I do to you is witchcraft. And it's up to you. Resist that. What I do to you is witchcraft. And it's up to you.
So that was awesome. I'm always like a geek for seeing like Black rock artists like that. That just okay. Let me stop before I go on a tangent. I'm just enjoying the fact that that was there. So with that being said, I'm gonna move forward and push this to Tatiana, and she's going to introduce our next section for our whole entire Juneteenth celebration today. So go for it, Tatiana.
Thanks, Jamal, and I agree with you as well. I love seeing Black people with rock. It's great. So right now, we're going to show a few videos from some brass students. So if we can go ahead and play the brass videos.
Hi, I am Jason Brown, and I'm the manager of Austin Community College's BRASS program, which stands for Black Representation of Achievement Through Student Support. We're a support group created to build equitable outcomes and provide the right support and representation of ACC's Black student population. Now we will have 5 of our prestigious BRASS students sharing what Juneteenth means to them, how they celebrate this glorious holiday, and their most proud moment thus far. Thanks for joining us, and happy Juneteenth.
Hello everyone, my name is Kate Trent.
My name is Malik Thomas.
My name is Isaiah Atkinson.
I'm Xavier.
My name is Sheila Jones, and I believe that Juneteenth is a time of celebration and a time of reorganization.
What Juneteenth means to me is the sole reason as to why I'm able to speak with you today.
And Juneteenth is a big part of my culture and history.
So for me, Juneteenth means that I can have an education. It means that I can build a Black business that is not based on a white supremacy model. That's super important.
The freedom to be able to read, to write, to educate myself. And it showed me that nothing is impossible in this world.
And Juneteenth to me means celebrating the unity and freedom of our once enslaved ancestors.
When I was growing up in school, it wasn't something that we talked about a lot.
For me, growing up in Utah, I didn't realize the significance of Juneteenth until I'd entered high school.
It was kind of in passing when we got to the presidents, when we talked about Abraham Lincoln, but it was never something that we had a discussion about. We weren't dissecting it, and we weren't able to process that.
And now as an adult, I know how important it is to teach the younger generations the trials and struggles that our ancestors went through so that we can be where we're at today.
So I'm taking Juneteenth to celebrate my personal heroes, Frederick Douglass, Ida B. Wells, Martin Luther King.
I personally celebrate by connecting with people who look like me, connecting with people who think like me, and connecting with people who understand that we have a personal responsibility to not only complain about the things that we disagree with, or not only complain about the things that concern us when it comes to our race, but to make a contribution to changing those things.
Usually we'll celebrate it surrounded by a barbecue pit, surrounded by family and friends, and just recognizing the day that slavery ended.
I'll be celebrating Juneteenth by eating at a Black-owned restaurant.
And the way that I celebrate Juneteenth is it's my birthday. Juneteenth is my birthday. So again, that was not by accident. That is not a coincidence. I'm here to do amazing things on this planet.
And this far, my proudest accomplishment will just be maintaining my education and priorities, and also just day by day getting a step better than how I was.
My personal achievement that I feel was the biggest was being able to house single moms and their children during the storm of 2021.
The first thing is just being a first-generation college student, and the second thing is being the first Black ESL teacher for the school that I work for.
And one of my biggest accomplishments is being the first one out of my siblings to attend college.
I believe personally that this is the only step that can be taken in order for us to progress as a race if we all take our own responsibility in progression very seriously.
I like to celebrate my ancestors and give thanks to them, because without them I would not be here doing this work. I like to sing, I like to dance, I like to eat, and I just spend that day doing things that bring me joy. Happy Juneteenth.
So I always think it's great to get feedback from students. So it was great to hear from the Brass students specifically what Juneteenth means to them. So thank you to all the Brass students that shared. Also, Brass is managed by one of our committee members, Jason Brown, and it provides a space for Black students to learn the ropes of college, gain a mentor, and start out in the front of the curve rather than playing catch up. And if you would like to get involved with Brass or learn more information, please contact Jason at his email. It's jason.brown@austincc.edu. And now we're going to transition over to the mayor of Manor, Dr. Larry Wallace Jr. And he is here, and I invite him to share a few words about the work that he has done and the importance of Juneteenth to him. So now I'll pass it over to Dr. Larry Wallace Jr.
Hi, how you doing? I appreciate the invite. Down here visiting my mom because we have some things going on in Manor for Juneteenth as well. We'll have an event from 10 to 12, and I know that other cities are doing things. And yesterday I was with fellow mayors talking about Juneteenth with Dell and have a couple more events over the weekend. And it's an honor and a privilege to be invited to just speak and just give words regarding this day, especially now that it is a recognized federal holiday. And in case you don't know the significance of what that means, we made Manor. Manor was probably one of the first cities in the Austin metropolitan area that declared Juneteenth a holiday. And what that entails is basically saying that that day is special enough for taxpayer dollars to be allocated for government and federal employees to be off, right? You're saying it's that special. And when there's an event that still goes on, whether it's in Austin or Manor or Pflugerville, these individuals now get, overtime because they're working on the days that they're off. I mean, that's huge. That's significant when you're saying now that this day is on the same par, the same level as these other holidays, to where it's that important to dedicate taxpayer dollars to make sure that this day is recognized at that level. So just keep that in mind as we're going in tomorrow to observe Juneteenth, that when Congress passed that and President Biden signed that into law, that's the statement that they were making about this day. And another piece of it, look at where we've come in 51 years. Desegregation happened in 1960, didn't really happen here in the South until 1970. Where we're at now, 51 years later, a lot of progress, but there's still a lot more that needs to be done. And as you are hearing different things as far as the, apologies for the phone, you're hearing things as far as the Emancipation Proclamation. You're hearing about Frederick Douglass and what he was able to do in support of changing the mindset of President Abraham Lincoln, that one person can make a difference if they have a focused mentality on what needs to be changed and why it needs to be changed. It was his mindset, and it didn't happen overnight. It took time to win over Abraham Lincoln, who did not want to have to make that change, did not want to be the one to implement the proclamation, right? You saw the same thing with Martin Luther King in winning over President Kennedy to make the change as well, something he did not want to do. So one person can make a difference if they're fighting and advocating for something that is truly needed and required, right? And so last couple of things. The Emancipation Proclamation happened in 1863. I've done proclamations about a lot of different areas. Basically, that's a statement that council and myself support a particular cause, right? That's not law. That's just a statement that we're saying on the record where we stand, what we're advocating for, but it's not law. It became law in 1865 with the 13th Amendment abolishing slavery. So 2 years after Abraham Lincoln professed a statement through proclamation of this is where I stand on this topic, it did not become law by Congress until 2 years later. And then that was what enabled the military forces to come down into the South states and down to the last one, as usually, Texas, to force the abolishment of slavery. And that's why 1865, Juneteenth, June 19th, when the last area that was still implementing slavery, because it had not become legal law and they were not forced to recognize that legal law, we recognized June 19th. So hopefully that's some information for you all to really take with you tomorrow during observing Juneteenth.
Thank you for your words and your presence. We really appreciate that. So now I want to also acknowledge all of the work that has been done in the past years by people on the committee, like Daryl, Phyllis, Wanda Alexander, who have championed this type of work for ACC for years. And to the others like Dr. Larry Davis and Dr. Kyrie Williams and Dr. Shasta Buchanan, who is in the short time that they have been at ACC have made a huge impact on the community. So take this time to reflect on the past, no matter how much time you have spent at ACC or in Austin, and share those thoughts in the chat box with us. You may also share your thoughts using the Padlet as well. And then next up, we have two performances. One is from Marcus Goodner and then Nicholas Sanchez. All right, so just a little background on Nicholas before we get started. Nicholas Sanchez, he's a Texan. He's originally from North Texas, but he got into Austin, Texas in 2006. He values faith, hope, and trust in Christ, and his inspiration for this song was the untimely passing of George Floyd, and also the social shaking that has rocked our world since the last year. So let's go ahead now and listen to Nicholas Sanchez.
My name is Nick Sanchez. The title of this song is I'll Breathe Again, and I wrote it in response to the tragic passing of George Floyd. Here we go.
and before we get started with our next performer, Marcus, let me give you a little bit of background from him. Marcus is from the heartfelt streets of Indianapolis, Indiana, where grit and consistency and hard work is rewarded and the power of owning your voice is learned and discovered. His apartment and neighborhoods where his canvas is. In his art, he strives to share the messages that inspire each individual, each dreamer, that you have a place and you have a gift that is needed in the world. Just have faith, because one day you will change the world for better. So now let's enjoy this performance from Marcus.
Hi, my name is Marcus Goodner. Today I'll be performing an original piece called Your Voice Matters. Child, on the day you realize your voice, there will be a celebration awaiting for you. On this day, there will be many people amongst the crowd. Friends, family, legends from the past, and most importantly, I will be there. I will look you in the eyes intensely, then smile. To be honest, it may sound weird, but in that moment, we both won't care, because you will have grasped a hold onto your purpose and realize your voice is the lock to endless possibilities. Child, you won't care. As a matter of fact, you will hug everyone in sight, even those you don't know or care for the most, because all that matters in that moment is your voice. Child, you won't care. Child, once the celebration is over and the crowds leave, the real fight begins. Some of the very people who celebrated your awakening will be waiting to see your defeat. Child, don't be afraid of the language nor actions they will display. Hold on tight. Use your voice in the powerful way it's been designed. Stand up tall, speak out loud, be strong, use your mind, have faith, be courageous, be confident, know you're alive, realize, there will always be a fight to be won. Child, you won't be faced. Child, on the day when it seems to be more than you can handle, remember this day of celebration, the hugs from strangers, family, friends, legends from the past, and most importantly, I will be there. And let that be a reminder of the endless possibilities you have, because your voice matters. Your voice matters. Your voice, it matters.
So I want to thank you to all the performers, for the mayor of Manor and all the brass students for sharing with us what Juneteenth means to them and how they celebrate it. And now I want to go ahead and pass it off to Sydney and Jason, who will lead us in a short discussion.
Thank you, Tatiana. So we have a few minutes before we introduce our guest speaker for the event, who is Marquise J. Bright. For this moment, we have one question that we would like the audience to answer. So please go ahead and type your thoughts in our Slido link, which is here on the screen and should also be placed in the chat. If you're having any technical issues, you can go ahead and answer the question in the chat through the live stream directly. We'll read the responses as they come in. Jason, would you please share the question with the audience?
All right, thanks, Sydney. Our question for today is, when was the first time that you were introduced to Juneteenth? Some of y'all may not have heard of it before until recently, and now it's a national holiday, so word is around everywhere. But as far as Juneteenth for me, I grew up in the Houston and Galveston area. So honestly, I know about Juneteenth before I knew about 4th of July due to my mother and Galveston being the origin of Juneteenth. How about you, Sydney?
So I'm from Louisiana, so I actually didn't learn about Juneteenth until I moved to Texas, which I know that's not uncommon for a lot of people. Just in the schools, it seems like they weren't really teaching about it. So that was my personal experience. So if you guys will go ahead and go put some of your responses in the chat, we'll go ahead and start to read those off. Go ahead,
as we wait, oh, my bad, I'm sorry, Cindy.
No, go ahead.
Oh, as we wait, we have a few members from the committee that's also outside of the state. We have members that are from Illinois, Michigan, and California. Would any of y'all like to share when you were first introduced to Juneteenth?
Oh, yes, I'll share mine. So I'm from California originally, and we didn't hear anything about Juneteenth. So it wasn't until I moved here to Texas, and my mother's husband at the time, he is from Texas, Corpus Christi. So that's when I learned about Juneteenth coming to Texas. So I was very disappointed that I didn't learn about that growing up as a child in California.
Thanks for sharing, Tatiana.
I'm from Michigan. Jason, I'm from Michigan, and my first introduction to Juneteenth was in college, so freshman year in my African American Studies course, when my professor told me that Juneteenth is our July 4th. So if you think about it, I was 18 or 19 at the time, and I really hadn't heard much about it until then. So that's kind of sad. That was really my first introduction.
All right, Daryl, would you like to share anything about your experience growing up in Illinois?
Yeah, we get the background noise, but yes, I didn't hear about Juneteenth, I want to say, until I moved to Texas in 2004. So just like Dr. Williams and Tatiana, and also I believe Sydney has mentioned, I was, well out of high school, an adult, before I even heard about Juneteenth. So that says a lot, not just about, where I grew up at, but also I should have took, maybe some time to kind of do some research on my own. But yeah, it was a while since first time I heard about Juneteenth.
Okay. Thank you. Daryl, how about you, Jamal? Oh, looks like we have, let's see.
We had a couple of responses. And before we get into those responses, I'll just say for me, I grew up in Chicago, so we really didn't talk about it a lot. Even though I went to an all-Black high school and grammar school, we never talked about Juneteenth. We talked about Martin Luther King more than anything else. So it was really interesting when I got to college that this started to come about more in conversations with some older elders in the community that were like, you need to know about this. This is some history you gotta really be up on. So for me, it was definitely college. And then I didn't really celebrate it until, I was an adult, because I didn't understand still in college the connotation and what that meant. And how serious that meant to certain communities. And surprisingly, I was in Iowa, and that was the it was 3% Black people, so very few Black folks to see. And that was the one time that Juneteenth was celebrated to the highest extent. It was a giant, not city, but streetwide parade and stuff like that. So I started to realize that in those neighborhoods where it may not be a lot of Black people, that Juneteenth had become a form of building that community and, seeing the community, because you don't really get to see folks when you're 3%, 2% Black, period, in the entire state. So it became a tool for people to really communicate and show off. People come out dressed in the nines like it's a premiere of a movie. So it was really good to see that. But yeah, y'all got some responses here, so I'll scroll down and let y'all read them off.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and read some of those. So here at the top says, I grew up in South Austin, and when I was little in the early 70s, I always knew that celebrations were happening in East Austin, but never had the opportunity to participate until I was here at ACC. Loretta and Roland organized events at Eastview, and those were my first real learning experiences. I would say that would be similar for me too. I didn't really see any Juneteenth celebrations until I started going to the Eastview campus. So hopefully in the future we can have more of those. Didn't know about Juneteenth until college, learned through history and sociology class. That seems to be common throughout a lot of these answers. Grew up in Houston. I recall knowing about Juneteenth, but learning more, preparing content for social studies, high school equivalency classes. That's really cool. Let's see, high school, college. It doesn't seem like a lot of people learned about it in elementary school. 2 weeks ago, Thank you for being here and learning more and sharing the performances and everything with us. It really is really important to us that you're here. Somewhere in the late 1980s, fourth grade, that's good. Getting closer to birth, learning about it, so that's good. Didn't know about Juneteenth until I moved to Texas about 10 years ago. That is exactly the same as me. It's a shame, as this is a very important piece of history. It is not celebrated on the East Coast. I'm hopeful that with Juneteenth being recognized as a national holiday, there would be more education across the U.S. and the globe about its significance. I also agree with that. Jason, do you want to read some of the other ones?
No, you're doing so good. I'll let you continue on.
Okay. So the 1960s and in the early 2000s. So it seems like we have a wide range of timelines of when people first learned about it, but we're glad that you're all here and participating with us. And, you know, hopefully we're able to spread the opportunity to others to learn more about this holiday. So thank you for sharing your thoughts, and just go ahead and keep the conversation going in the chat through the live stream. We're not going to be using Slido anymore from this point. So next, we're going to show the performance.
Hey, Sydney, I'm sorry, not to cut you off. There are a few in the chat. Can I go ahead and share those here real quick that we got from the live stream?
Yes.
Of course.
Yeah, we have one that says, I'm from the Northeast. Never heard of Juneteenth until the past few years here in Austin. Then we also have someone that's from Pennsylvania and learned about Juneteenth from the TV show Atlanta. So no school education on this piece of history whatsoever. So at least we got it from a TV show. So that's probably a little history that we can kind of take away from it. But yeah, common themes that we have seen even in a live stream chat, Sydney, or from the slide of people not being introduced to this until maybe later into their teenage life or adult or young adulthood life. So.
Thank you, Daryl. So now we're gonna show the performance by Saul Paul. And just to give you a little bit of background on him, Grammy Award nominated artist Saul Paul has garnered an international reputation as a musician with a message. Part rapper, part singer-songwriter, Saul Paul is an entertaining artist who blends his voice, his guitar, and his loop pedal to create a live show that is nothing less than an experience. And so now we'll watch that video.
ACC 2021. Over 150 years ago, a price was paid, a path was paved by slaves. We should take advantage of it and be the change.
I've been thinking about it, I should be the change. Ain't no doubt about it, it's time to be the change. Ain't no way around it if you're tired of the same. Oh, now is the time to be the change, be the change, be the change. Oh, oh, yeah, yeah, oh, oh. Yeah, yeah, oh, oh. Yeah, yeah, oh, oh. Question. We all human, right? Then we should all have basic human right. And if I'm doing right, and if I'm doing well, then I probably shouldn't sit and watch my neighbor fail. We could all prevail, we could all succeed, but I gotta be the change, I must be the lead. So I guess I lend a helping hand, show love to my neighbor, help them stand. I've been thinking about it, I should be the change. Ain't no doubt about it, it's time to be the change. Ain't no way around it if you're tired of the same. Oh, now is the time to be the change, be the change, be the change. Oh, oh, yeah, yeah, oh, oh, Yeah, yeah, oh, oh. Yeah, yeah, oh, oh. Yeah, yeah.
We want to show gratitude and love to all of our performers thus far for sharing their talent with us. So now I'm pleased to pass the mic off to Dr. Kyrie Williams, who's going to introduce our guest speaker.
Thank you so much, Sydney. I'll now introduce our speaker, Mr. Marcus Wright, owner of Daddy Do's Cookies. He's a prominent business owner in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and a friend and a brother. I watched him leave a thriving career in higher ed. As a director, he was doing some amazing things, well celebrated, well achieved, step away from that career to pursue his dream. In an industry that we're just not well represented in. And I've seen him go through those challenges, but really build his business into a flourishing business. And I brought him out to speak to some students a few years ago, and he had such a dynamic message. It was so impactfful and so inspirational, even to me, that I thought, hey, even though he's in Grand Rapids, Michigan, this is a message that we need to hear here in Austin, here at Austin Community College. So without further ado, I'll bring on Mr. Marcus Wright.
Thank you, brother. Good to be here today. I'm just going to share a little bit about my story, who I am, where I come from, kind of my frame of reference, and kind of how that frame actually shaped who I am. And I don't want to say imprisoned me a little bit, but kind of put a few shackles on what I thought I could be or what I should be, and how those messages changed when I began raising my own children and my grandmother passed away, and I just started to see things much differently than I did as I was growing up. It wasn't that the messages were wrong. It was that, we needed to expand our thinking. So one of the quotes I want to start with is, you are the sum total of everything you've ever seen, heard, eaten, smelled, been told, forgot. It's all there. Everything influences each of us. And because of that, I try to make sure that my experiences are positive. And that is by Dr. Maya Angelou. And that is one of the quotes that I live by. So I talk to everybody about what they consume. So I am let's just say I'm a seasoned man at this point in my life, where I often reflect on the experiences that I had. I grew up on the west side of Chicago, called the North Lawndale community, where a lot of people don't make it out. I lived there till I was about 11 years old with my mom, my brother, my sister. It was just one of those neighborhoods where when you lived in it, it was just your neighborhood. You didn't think about it. And I really didn't think about the kind of neighborhood I lived in until I left it and came back. And it was the most terrified I'd ever been. It was one of those situations where I didn't know where I lived until I left it and saw something that provided me with a little bit more safety than I thought I needed. So growing up in Chicago, it was a very interesting experience where everybody was entrepreneurial. You lived on the streets, you worked on the streets, and you learned what you needed to do from the streets. So my frame of reference is talking about we had one television in the house, and whatever my mom was watching, that is what we all watched. So, whether it was Leave It to Beaver, All in the Family, any of the soap operas that still come on, All My Children, General Hospital, all of that, the Jeffersons in the evening, that's what shaped kind of my frame of reference. So that's what I saw on TV, outside of, sports, where you tend to see a lot of Black folks and other people of color. So that was my frame of reference as I was starting to grow up. The one time we got a little bit control of the TV was when we had the Saturday morning cartoons. So we got to watch, Bugs Bunny and whatnot in the morning. And that was kind of our little outlet. But for the most part, we either had to watch what my mom was watching, or you had to get out of the house and go outside. So that was one of my first frames of references, what I saw on TV, what I saw outside, drugs being dealt on the street. And a lot of that came into my house because I had several folks in my family that were, I guess, dealing with substance abuse at that time. So seeing that, and having to navigate that was challenging at times. So then at that time, my father, who is a college graduate, was at Eastern Illinois University. And at that time, he had decided, I want to go get my children. So he decided I'm going to go get his 3 kids that he had at the time and move us out of town. So we moved 60 miles outside of Chicago to a small town called DeKalb, Illinois. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with Illinois, but it's like the corn capital of the Midwest. And it was, I went from a predominantly Black, pretty much all Black community to a 98% white community. And that was a complete culture shock for me. And we had to learn to navigate that, that neighborhood, that city, or that town that we lived in. And within a few months, me and my brother had already gotten in trouble with the police. My father said, hey, I don't want to have to send you back to Chicago. I'm going to do what I need to do to keep you guys here. And that was the one conversation that I know I had to have with my dad that kind of led to me understanding that I needed to do better, that I was in a different environment, and I needed to improve what I was going to do if I wanted a different trajectory for my life. So I began to, focus in school, do a little bit better. Ended up going to Illinois State University, which is in the middle of Illinois. And that transition to Illinois State was much easier because I had the transition to DeKalb, Illinois, where the city was predominantly white already. So went to this university, got a bachelor's degree in business administration, got a master's degree in training, got a training and development, got a certificate in project management, was involved in every student organization you could think of. And I went to college because that was the message: go to college, get an education. I didn't know anything else. Everybody was always told, just go to college, get an education, and something will, magically happen. You'll get a job, and this is the way. This is the life. So I got those 2 degrees, got the certificate, still didn't know what I wanted to do. So I had to talk with some of my mentors, say, hey, I got all this experience working with student organizations. I have these degrees. I don't know what I'm going to do. Ended up staying with my friend on my friend's couch for several months, unsure what I wanted to do with my life. And then having the conversation that, hey, maybe you can go into higher education. So, and that's one of the things I had never even thought of, about working at a college or university, looking at that as a possible option. So from 2005 to 2018, I worked in, actually not 2005, 2002, I worked in higher education for a very long time, enjoyed it, moved up the ranks, moved from Illinois State University to Grand Valley State University, where I spent 13 years in multiple roles. And my last role was kind of the most satisfying role. And I began to see this is kind of what I've always wanted to do in higher ed. And I was really excited and really happy about it. So that's what I did for the last 5 years. I was at Grand Valley. I was the director of TRIO Student Support Services, helped graduate hundreds of students, helped students get all types of scholarships, developed a broad program that sent students to Chile, was sent to Ghana, West Africa for 2 weeks. So all these different experiences started to happen. And during that time frame was also when my grandmother passed away, and who was being a very significant part of my life. I kind of had to decide, what was all the work she did for? What was all the work your parents did for? Is this kind of where you want to be? So I started to reassess my life in general and began to spend more time in the kitchen, because that's the place I would spend time with her. And from there, kind of the dream of not necessarily baking, but a dream of doing something with food leading to some sort of financial freedom was, pretty heavy on my life at that point. But at the same time, I had to look at all the additional influences I was looking at as I went to college. And as I got older, I started to have my own influences that weren't influenced by my mom and my parents. So I'm listening to TLC, Erykah Badu, Fresh Prince, Tupac, watching Dragon Ball Z, watching Martin, all these things that I didn't have the opportunity. I got my own TV. I can watch what I want now and be able to influence myself, and understanding that a lot of times when we get on our own, we start to feed ourselves, whether it's food, whether it's books, whether it's television shows, and understanding that we need to have the discipline to be able to consume what is good for us. Because not everything that is consumable is something that's actually good for our minds, our hearts, our souls, our bodies. So it's important to understand that. So in all of these processes, I went through a self-discovery of what I wanted to do. So like I said, I was working in higher ed. I was doing a blog. I was helping people get into higher ed. So I created a website for that, doing all these different things. And then boom, again, I said, we get to my grandmother passing away, and I'm trying to think about what it is that I want to do. At that point, I started to assess all the messages that I was told when I was younger. So it was go to college, get a job, and work twice as hard. And that, go to college, get a job. Okay, that said, well, I understand why I need to do that. I need some income to be able to live, because you need income to live. But it didn't sit right with me that I had to work twice as hard. Why do I have to work twice as hard? And then the other part is to get half as much. The only people in history, and this may it's not sit well with some folks, the only people in history that worked twice as hard for half as much or less were people that were enslaved. And that started to reverberate in my mind. Hard work is nothing to be sneezed at. It's important to work hard and to do that, to get to your goals and your dreams. But I just felt like, why is it that we, always have to do that? Is this just ingrained in society? So I started to reformulate my thinking and what I wanted for my children. And I started telling them, my daughter is 12 and my son is 9, that college is one of many options. You can go to college and I'll be happy if you do. I will support you if you do. But if you want to go in a different direction, let's just talk about building a plan for that. Whether you want to go to trade school, whether you want to get a certification, what is it that you want to do that's going to help you to achieve the goals and dreams for your life? Getting a job is good. Getting a job is nothing to be sneezed at. Like I said, I worked for over 15 years in higher education. I've been working since I was 12. And that's perfectly understandable that you need a job in order to be able to achieve the things that you need to achieve. But for me personally, I said, you know what? I've done the job thing. Let's see what happens if I pursue something that I really like, a passion that I really enjoy. If it fails, hey, I can try to go back to higher education. I have all this experience. I have teaching experience, administrative experience. Hopefully they'll take me back if it doesn't work. Fortunately, it has worked, but it's always one of those where I tell people, be careful when you decide to pursue your dreams, making sure that you understand you have to have some type of plan. If the plan doesn't work, what is your contingency if it doesn't? So I had a contingency that, hey, I would go back and plead for a different position if that didn't work. But like I said, fortunately, it did. So the message I tell my children is college is one of many options. Getting a job is good, but discovering your passion, I think, is also very important. And then while working hard and twice as hard is a thing that's noble, it's also important to learn to work smart. So that's what I've begun to do with, my business, working smart in that. So now we get to this, I go through this higher education. I go through all this growing up in Chicago, go through a predominantly white school. I get married, have kids. And now let's talk about this ladder. The ladder is kind of one of the things that began to frustrate me because, you're looking at people getting promoted, you're looking at people getting raises, and you're looking at yourself like, is this the ladder I want to be on? So, because if something doesn't happen, you're overlooked for the promotion, you're overlooked for the raise, how are you going to feel about that? Are you going to be able to navigate that? So in 2002, I started working full-time. 2004, master's degree. 2005, new position in Michigan. 2005, marriage. 2008, daughter born. 2011, son born. 2013, I achieved a director level role. 2014, my grandmother passed away. So these are, all this stuff is happening while I'm climbing the ladder. I started playing around with baking, like I said, when my grandmother passed away, and it was my daughter who said, Dad, I think you should turn this into a business. And I was like, well, this is just cookies, and I was doing other stuff. This is, people may or may not like this. I don't understand if this or think this will work. But it was one of those situations where I just really felt like there was a call to do something completely different. So I spent the next several, years and months just working and tweaking out recipes, testing them out on my family. I tested them out at work first. So I sent them to work and my employees were all like, man, this is really good. But I didn't know if they were lying because it was, I'm their boss and they're just going to tell me my products are good. So I tested it out with my family. I have 9 siblings, 5 brothers and 4 sisters now. I'm the oldest of everyone. But that doesn't mean that they're going to sugarcoat anything that they're going to tell me. So I proceed to give them and test out the cookies with my siblings. And they were like, you know what? These are really good. You should consider taking these to market. So that's taking these to the market. So that's when I decided to go after Daddy's Dough LLC. I got the Twitter name, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and we made our first sales in October of 2015. So, and that was while I was still working full-time. So I'm working full-time and I'm testing out this business. And we're just, putting it out there. We just got people see that we're doing this, we're doing this thing. We have this business. The cookies are, pretty good. Let's see how it goes. We do a farmer's market in 2016. And before we knew it, we were making hundreds of cookies a week. So we decided we're just going to do the farmer's market season. And then we'll tell people if they want private orders, we can do that. Then a couple years go by and we're deciding, where do we want to take this thing? So we decided to go to a couple of wedding shows and we get some weddings. We do 5 weddings in 2018. And that was kind of one of those things where we said, you know what, we really can take this to the next level. And we got our commercial license that year and the business really started to take off. And since then we've been expanding. So we got our first retail store in 2018, 2019, we added additional retail stores, and we've been adding additional retail stores every year. And we only, and I say only because a lot of people say, are you in hundreds of stores? And we'll say no. We're in about 10 stores in the West Michigan area, and that works well for us. And a lot of times people will say, well, why aren't you in more stores? I said, well, it's really about what are you doing this for? And for me, it's about what I call buying back your time. Can you produce enough work and produce enough income where now I'm spending more time with my family, more time with my kids, more time with my wife than I was when I was working in higher ed, while still being able to make money for the business? And that was extremely, extremely important to me. Now I can grow the business and decide, let me be in hundreds of stores, but how many hours a week am I going to be working? So it's all about, what kind of management and kind of balance what we always say in higher ed is work-life balance, which is, I have a problem with that term already. But it's very important to understand that whatever goals you set to achieve, work on achieving those goals, because people will always have something to say about your business. They'll always, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And a lot of times they have no idea what it takes or what it means to run a business. So be mindful of that. So, and then where the business is going well, we're kind of, even keel. And then the pandemic hits. And we're like, oh my gosh, what do we do? Am I going to have to go back to work? What's going to happen? So right before we started to mess with our website, we're like, let's make sure people can really start to submit online sales. And that is probably what saved our business in 2020. 2020 was our best year for income, and 60% of that was online. 60% of it online. We shipped all over the country. We even shipped overseas. Texas is actually our number 4 state on the list. It's Michigan, Illinois, California, and Texas in terms of our top 4 states where we receive orders from. And we appreciate all of our friends from Texas who do that. So, and then we'll go to 2021. And we're in 2021, we're like, okay, we had a great year in 2020. Pandemic is kind of fading out. And now what we see is people are kind of pulling back from small businesses because they're now starting to go out to the restaurants again. But we're kind of maintaining and doing that. We're doing really well this year. So we're happy with where we are in terms of the business. So I say all that to say, one of the things that when I was talking about how I was growing up is that we often have chained thoughts, what I call chained thoughts. And these are obstructive and destructive thoughts that keep us from achieving our dreams. And, kind of the obstructive thoughts are obstacles that we put in the way of ourselves. I can't do this. My past keeps me from doing this. Or emotions may even keep you from doing it. Or you have your personal self-image of who you want to be does not fit that. Or even worse, somebody else's image of you does not fit with what you want to do. And that's actually what I stayed in my job 1 year longer than what I wanted to be because I was afraid of what people would think. This man has a master's degree and he's going to bake cookies. I was afraid of what people would think. And then at some point, I just felt like it doesn't matter. So obstructive thoughts are often those things that we put in the way. Destructive thoughts, we know, are those things that we either do to ourselves or that we do to self-sabotage kind of the whole situation of us being able to do better. It's kind of this all or nothing mentality. If I don't achieve this goal, well, I can't do this or I won't be able to do that. And I tell people it's very important to understand to move forward. You have to be able to remove those the destructive thoughts that you have in your mind. So I'm really big on what goes on in your head actually eventually comes out and manifest in your life, whether that's an obstructive or destructive thought. And that's where we move to these. And these are what I consider to be chain thoughts, kind of the thoughts that keep us in a place, not necessarily that we don't want to be, but keeps us in a place longer than we actually should be in achieving the dreams that we have for our lives. And then we want to move to these things that we call free thoughts. And these are the constructive thoughts. We build towards our hopes, our dreams, and your future. So it's important to, a lot of folks, well, I don't know what my hopes and dreams are. Then you should be spending time thinking about what you want that to be. And the thing is, it's easier to, in my opinion, it's easier to fix or to tweak plans that are laid on paper than to just look at a blank sheet of paper and continue to wonder where you're going. So it's one of those quotes that says, The goals that you don't set, you achieve every time. So because you don't set any goals, of course you'll achieve it because there are no goals there. So it's important to keep that in mind. Well, what are my hopes? What are my dreams? Even if that has nothing to do with the business you want to do, the job you want to have, what kind of life do you want to have? And what do I need to do to get there? And that's what I kind of looked at. I wanted to spend more time with my wife, more time with my kids, more time visiting my family in Chicago because I'm 3 hours away from them, more time traveling. And we've been able to do that much more. With the exception of last year, we've been able to do that much more than we ever have because we decided, you know what, we're gonna make a few changes, and we again financially have way more than we have ever thought we would have. So, and then like I said, these mentorships are often built in the things that we teach ourselves and the things that we're taught from our parents. So it's important to understand that. So I would say there are a lot of things that I can share, a lot of things that I can teach, but the few things that I want to leave you with, and that's like I said, the obstructive thoughts, the destructive thoughts, and then coming back to making sure you understand what it means to have constructive thoughts. But understanding what you consume is important. So making sure that you are viewing stuff that's important, reading stuff that's important, reading stuff that has value to you, that will add value to your life so that you can continue to move forward. I read or listen to books all the time. And you'd be surprised if you have a library card from the local library, even from your school, that allows you to check out audiobooks for free. A lot of people think you have to have Audible. And if you spend a few minutes on the bus, in your car, in an Uber or whatever, you should be able to gobble up books like nobody's business. And that's extremely important to be able to help you to get to the direction that you want to go in. So think about your thoughts, the feelings, the attitudes, the actions that you have, and how all of that is projecting you towards the future that you want to have. So I think that's my time. I'm getting a message telling me it's my time. I know I have a bunch. I could keep talking forever, but I'm very, very, very happy to take as many questions as folks have just about my journey and just my thoughts about how it's very important for you to consume the most important things in order for you to be able to achieve your hopes and your dreams.
Mr. Wright, brother, I appreciate you. I appreciate your message. I remember about 4 or 5 years ago when I brought you to speak to my students, I remember sitting in the back and listening to you and reflecting on that and realizing I needed that message too.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you so much.
Yeah.
The first question we have is from a student, and it's about your message. Essentially, it says, I hear you talking about passion and following your purpose and following your dream, and that leads to freedom. But my concern is, what if my passion doesn't necessarily translate into a job right away out of college, which is what I'm hearing from my parents and people around me.
Right. I'm a huge fan of gobbling up information. So I'm a fan of do what you need to do to survive. You got to take care of Maslow first, right? You got to take care of the hierarchy of needs. You got to be able to eat, you got to be able to sleep, you got to be able to do whatever. Sometimes you have to work first in order to be able to work on your passion kind of on the side. So a lot of times those things that we call side hustles eventually become full-time jobs if we work on them in the right way. And some of those things may not be. You may have to find a job that allows you to work on your passion at the same time, where it's like, cool, I have a job that I like, and I'm also able to work on my passion. And sometimes it's not something that will turn into something full-time, but the position and the role that you have allows you to be able to balance those two both. So that's what was happening to me at Grand Valley, but it got to a point where I had to quit, or I had to quit the business. So it's one of those things where you just have to decide, like, can I find a position that allows me to pursue or work on my passion at the same time, or go into a role that somebody's doing what you want to do and you gobble up as much as you can from them and then go pursue your own thing. So it's a lot of options for that. But I think the key is to never stop working on it, even if it's jotting something down in a notebook, doing a quick video diary, or like I said, learning to balance that between a job that you need and then working on the passion that you want.
Awesome. Thank you. The next question, I believe, is from a community member, and it essentially says, you talk about your successes in your business, but is there another side? You're a Black man running a cookie business. Has that been challenging?
Oh, yeah. Listen, I try not to talk about, you try to stay on the positive side. So here's the thing. I'm a Black man running a cookie business, and people expect old white women. That's the first thing they expect. So when they see me, they're kind of like, okay. And then they ask me, do you bake? Who's baking? Who's making the recipes? Do you get these from the store? They don't think I do any of it, especially being in West Michigan. So we definitely had to carve out, and we utilize the Black community for a lot of that. So the Black folks in Grand Rapids have come to bat for us big time. There are a lot of supportive organizations that have helped us as well. So yeah, you do this is the one area where, you know, I'm like, wow, I've never been stereotyped in this way. You know, other ways for sure, but never in this way where people look at you and like, you know, you bake cookies. And we've definitely had to navigate that. And we just navigate as best as we can. We just tell folks, you know, yep, I do it, and just keep on moving. If you want to buy the product, great. If not, we have other regular customers that support our business. Yeah, there are a lot of challenges that we've had to deal with in that way. Especially also, like I said, Dr. Williams is familiar with West Michigan, where it's predominantly white, and you have to navigate that also. So knowing where your customers are and being able to pick your spots is extremely important.
All right, the next question is from a faculty member. So any thoughts on how to help steer a student in the right direction when you feel like they are not aligned with their passions, but they're in your program, they're not thriving? But we don't want to discourage them, but you also want them to be going in the right direction.
Yeah, I found that the best way for those students is to be honest with them about, because I had a student who just wasn't, I think she just wasn't feeling the institution. And one of the things we're taught is to retain, right? But I'm also of the belief is, well, what's going to be best for this student? And we ended up talking to the student, and she's like, I really want to go. I really need to be close to home because of this. So I said, well, let's look at schools that are close to your house that you can potentially, and she ended up thriving and getting a degree from another institution. She was from Chicago, born in Grand Valley, but didn't want to be there and only went there because I think she had a scholarship and whatnot. But we ended up figuring out that we could get her a similar package at another institution in Chicago. And that helped her out tremendously because now she felt like, okay, if things are going on with my family, I can attend to those needs. So sometimes it's about really getting down to what's going on with the student. A lot of times they have other stuff or a huge history that you have to unpack. Unfortunately, I've had to reveal like stories about my past to students for them to understand I didn't just end up here magically with a degree. They look at us and they think, oh, you got a doctorate or you got a master's. Oh, you don't know what I'm going through. Well, when you start to tell them your poverty stories or your Roach Motel stories or any other story that you have, they start to see, okay, this person is going through some things too. Maybe they do know what they're talking about, and maybe they'll be more willing to listen to, you know, the words that are coming out. Sometimes, like I said, revealing what it is about you, getting down to being as honest as you can with the student, and hoping that you can get to what is really the underlying crux of the issue that is keeping them from achieving what they want to achieve.
Awesome. Thank you. I think this is gonna be our last question, but this is from another student, and the question essentially is asking. So it says, part of the concern is we often don't see or know people like you that are kind of following the path we want to go. So we don't have the playbook. How do we kind of make that connection? I guess to help us.
Yeah, my personal thing I tell folks is to network through people that you know. So yes, that's one. You can network through people that you know. So you can say, Dr. Williams, I'm interested in this field. Do you know anybody in this field? Usually there's this rule that there's like anywhere between 2 to 6 degrees of separation between everybody. So you can always go on Google and just blind and cold email folks. I'm a huge fan of getting emails from any person that is trying to pursue anything, even in the industry that I'm in or just small business. And I will happily respond. I don't feel threatened at all by anyone that even wants to do the exact same business because there's enough room out there. Once you find out the Oreo makes $2 billion a year, the Girl Scouts make almost $800 million a year, and that they're serving cookies on airplanes and hotels and all, you start to see that there's room. When you see 100 different types of bread in the aisle, you start to see all that. So I think one of those things is talking to people that you know, being willing to cold email folks because information is out all over the internet, and being able to say, hey, I'm a student at Austin Community College, and I'm really interested in this field. Would you be able to help me or answer a few questions? You would be surprised at the number of people that are willing to help. There are hundreds of people that are willing to help. We just don't get asked the questions. Right now, I'm mentoring 4 other businesses in the Grand Rapids area that are doing baking or similar types of products that I am. And all of us are doing fine. So yeah, I would just got to be willing and be willing to take rejection as well, because someone might say no, and they just might have to try again.
All right, well, brother, how do they buy your product? How do they keep in contact with you, stay connected with you?
So you can go to our website at www.daddiesdough.com. That's daddiesdough.com. You can follow us on Instagram at Daddy's Dough. You can find us on Facebook at Daddy's Dough. You can email me, cookies@daddysdough.com. And once you type in Daddy's Dough Cookies to Google, should be the only one that pops up. And you'll be able to shoot me an email, find us on the website if you want to order anything, or if you just got questions about business in general. And for the student that asked a question about, trying to find someone to connect to, and once you get into the entrepreneurial world, you connect to hundreds of people. So if I don't know somebody, I know somebody who knows someone that can connect with you in the field that you're interested in. And I still have my 15 years of higher education connects where I can connect with people as well. So I utilize all of that in my business. So daddysdough.com, at Daddy's Dough in multiple places. And I'm on Twitter too. But Instagram and Facebook are primarily what we use.
Marcus, thank you so much. We appreciate you. Appreciate your inspirational words. And thank you for just kind of blessing our event.
Thank you.
I'll pass it back to, I believe, Jamal to close us out.
Yes. So thank you to all of our speakers today. We've had, of course, Dr. Larry Wallace Jr. here, and then Marcus that was here to really give some words. That is something that I never really get a chance to see a lot of times. We're seeing Black brothers who are in very different fields, but still doing massive things and being able to talk about those experiences and really give some good words there. And these are folks that in our community that I hope we recognize and understand that they've been here and they're really trying to put out there for us. So I thank our speakers for really coming in and doing that for us. Performers as well, the folks that provided us our videos. So it's Nicholas, to Marcus, to Southpaw, to Amanda, to Jackie, to all of them for being able to provide us with their great talents and to show us what they can do and to show off, in front of the community and show out as well. Throughout all of this, we just want to bring something that would show love and care to the Black community here in Austin, while also showing that even during this time frame, during this pandemic still ongoing, that we can still be a community and that we can find ways to share together and to share in these annual celebrations, regardless of the impact or issues or obstacles that we are faced with. So with that, I'll pass it to Sydney.
Yeah, thank you, Jamal. We definitely appreciate all of the love and thoughts and presence today that you guys spent the time with us to learn more about Juneteenth and its origins and more about our artists and our business owners and our community in general. Even though this is virtual, I still feel pretty close to everyone. Hopefully you guys have the same or similar experience to me. We hope that you continue to connect with us and reach out to those that were involved and support them as well. We do want to create a network and continue to support each other. Communication is really important, and we have to continue to communicate so that we can learn and grow in our relationships and just continue to thrive and be better. Jamal.
And last but not least, one of the things we want to put out there is on the screen already. So the people that we want to thank, I want to thank everybody on the entire committee. If you didn't know, the folks on this committee from different spaces of the college, myself as being the student life stand-in, Josh, who's not here with us at Student Life, but I saw that he was in the chat. So thank you for your time served. But we've been trying to make sure we got people from across the college as much as possible who are interested in bringing Black cultural programming together. Does that mean that you who are already doing programming or folks that are here that are already interested that you can't be a part of it? No, I think this is a good chance for you to ask questions and how you want to be a part of committees like this, because it's a lot of work, but we also do it with a lot of love. So if this is something that you're interested in doing, or if you want to see what, events that you want to put on in the future and how you want to process it, let us know. We're definitely looking for people who want to work with social media and want to work with, different pieces of marketing. So those are things that help these types of programs continue to move forward. Also, I want to thank the tech team. I mean, Balan and his squad, we would not be able to do this without his squadron. So really, thank y'all for being here and thank y'all for, helping us through this process of this event. This is honestly one of the first times I've been able to see on this campus a Black cultural event that's been treated like several other events, period, that ACC does. So for that to be something that you choose to do and help us out in sense of normalizing this type of cultural events is great. It's grateful, and I'm grateful for that experience, and I appreciate it. Again, to SA Comms, thank y'all for everything, for the logos, for working with us, for being timely on a lot of that information, and to continuously working with us through this process and not dropping off once the event started. So I appreciate all the work that has happened from that team. Once we get done with everything here, I want everybody to know that this will be recorded, in the sense that everything that we're doing today will be recorded, and we'll hopefully be able to post that to ACCTV, and they'll be able to replay this entire event. So if you got friends or family that may have missed this celebration, they can see it then. At the same time, similar last year's event, if you want to know what we did last time for the virtual event, because 2020 was the thing, you can go down on the same page and see that exact link and watch what we did. As well as the Padlet wall that we've been talking about. You can still see what everybody's been posting or what's been posted throughout the month by clicking the link that's on the right-hand side. That page has so many resources, and we're hoping that it can still be a spot to grow. But it's an opportunity for any information that you have seen across ACC that deals with Juneteenth to be placed there. This is one of the first times that we ever had a specific page that was guaranteed and dedicated to this event. So we want to make sure it's cultivated and used, and that it's a space of resources for all. With that being said, we know we are ending early, which is fine, because I am all about giving people their time back. I want understanding how this works. So I appreciate anyone and everybody that has been here in this space. And we thank all of you for being here for the time being. If no one else has anything else to say, then happy Juneteenth. Enjoy your day. Of course, Juneteenth is tomorrow. There are celebrations like we saw, the ones that's going to be in Rosewood. There are several other things that are happening across the city. Please try to participate. As they have been saying, at that time, as you should always do, as much as you possibly can, make sure that you're going into paying for Black-owned businesses, making sure that you're dumping money into those spaces. As you can see with Daddy's Dough, those are spaces that people can put money into that isn't always being, utilized or being able to be praised that way. So please go forth with that mentality. Please go forth with form of positivity, happiness, and love. And with all that being said, y'all have a great day.